We're on. So happy Sunday, everybody. This is Yvonne Taylor, and this is our second interview for the Minority Health Awareness Month. And today I am being joined by a very astute mental health professional. Her name is Marie Jones Watts. And Marie and I know each other from another life and another profession, but Maria is like really at the top of her game in mental health. And with that, I'm going to shut up and let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit more about her. So take it away, Marie.
Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you very much for the kind words. I wouldn't consider myself top of the game. However, I appreciate that. Um, so let's see, I got started in the field of behavioral health, believe it or not, in high school, and it was totally unexpected. I took an elective class. It was a psychology class, and lo and behold, I was enthralled and immediately decided I was going to change my major to study psychology in college. So that's kind of how I got started. And I went to undergrad, got my bachelor's degree in psychology at Jackson State University, and then came home to Michigan and pursued my master's degree in counseling at Michigan State University. And while I was pursuing my graduate degree, the local mental health agency had some openings. I said, why not? Let me go ahead and get my foot in the door. And I've been at that agency for almost 29 years in various capacities. So I am licensed as a professional counselor in the state of Michigan. And I also hold a certified advanced addictions counselor certification. And that's pretty much it. Well, in terms of one of my major jobs, I also am a group fitness instructor, certified wellness advisor. And believe it or not, all of that is related to mental health.
Awesome. And that is where Marie and I know each other from, because I am a fitness professional by trade, and she and I share space on another platform where we both learn about health and fitness wellness and things like that. So it's really great for her to tell us that how they kind of blend together. And it's awesome to see how she's able to blend those things together, because it lets me know that I'm doing a little itty bitty part to help her bigger job be better. So that's really great. And I love working with each other. So we're kind of like in the phase, the questions that we're going to ask about is like, this pandemic has really transformed the world. And the one thing it's done is it has exposed a lot of medical and mental disparities in the minority community, but it's also exposed some hidden mental health issues among all communities. But historically, our community has been hesitant to seek the help of mental health professionals because, in the African American community, we just don't do that. But have you seen this change, a change in the behavior during the pandemic and from the time that it started till now? Have you seen a change, and what does that change look like?
Yes, I have definitely seen a change. And the biggest change I've seen is the fact that people are actually talking about it. Persons of color, I like to consider them the global majority,
Awesome.
have started talking about it, are aware of it, and are promoting like getting help. Like it's okay to not be okay, and to offer resources or pass along resources. And these resources I'm finding are the non-traditional resources. And non-traditional being, as you know, with COVID, now a lot of things, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of things are done via virtual platform. There's been an explosion of the use of that. And that in part definitely increases access and availability to people.
Awesome. Let me ask you about that too in the virtual space. And when you're working with clients and people who are dealing with the challenging issues, do you feel that the in-person counseling aspect is better, or is the virtual better, or is there just a balance of the same? Some people like to be mano a mano, you know what I mean? And some people, we look at this space where we're on these screens with each other, as sometimes it might not be, this is not really real. How is this really helping me? Because when you're in this space with people, physically, you can feed off of their energy. And so my question is, do you find that there's a difference? Does it take longer for people to get their breakthroughs in the virtual space as it does in the personal space? Because like I said, you have that feeding of the energy and the, I'm not trying to be cosmic or anything, but just like you can feel a person's genuineness
Yes.
when you're in person with them as opposed to when I'm on the screen with you.
No, I certainly understand that. And what I can say to that is just from my own personal experience. Pre-COVID, all in terms of my profession and what we were doing in providing behavioral health services, everything was in person. And though there was a Zoom, in our behavioral health field, there was, at least where I'm presently working, there was no idea of connecting via Zoom or via whatever platform there is, a virtual platform. So to think about the connection, is there a connection? Oh, it's probably, if we are meeting, like the two of us are meeting right now, there is no connection whatsoever. It's just blocked, just like we watch TV. When we watch TV, we can detach from really what's going on, but really get into it. But then when we walk away and we're done.
Mhm.
With COVID, just my own personal experience of being involved in different personal enrichment stuff just for my own personal development, I was quite shocked at the connection that I had with individuals. And almost in disbelief, but had to experience it several times to be like, oh my God, there is really a connection. I can actually feel
Oh, wow.
that connection.
Come
So
on.
that's amazing. Now, I referenced access before. The fact that we have telehealth now and it's widespread means that there's more access to people. So my thought on that is depending upon the person, because each person's treatment should be individualized, person centered, based upon all the various nuances of their ethnic backgrounds, their beliefs. Um, so figuring out what works for them, it could be telehealth, it could be a virtual platform, and or it could be a hybrid,
Hmm.
or it could be I just prefer to be in person one-on-one. So we have options,
Hmm.
but I was quite surprised after experiencing this virtual space and now doing it more so than I've ever done, and I'm sure a lot of us in our lives, the connection that you can actually feel and build. It is quite remarkable.
Wow. That's, and I would think that is, with everybody, like you said, everybody has a different, I guess, outlook and a different perception and a different way that they connect. Well, for the person who's maybe a little bit more introverted, this might be a safe space for them. I
Mhm,
don't have to
mhm,
be in the room with you because
mhm.
now I feel like there's something that separates us but connects us at the same time. So that's a really interesting observation. I never thought of it that way, but I always wondered about it. So that hence the question. Um, so that's great. So we are seeing those accesses, which is great. So we talked about, and I like how you said the global community, the larger
Mhm.
global community. So those, and I've been told we should be called people of color. So for people of color, in your professional opinion, what causes people of color to hesitate? you know, um, in seeking help, and what has been your experience with that, and why, and what do you think we can do to change the behavior? I know right now the conversations are coming out, but what are your thoughts that cause the initial hesitation?
First and foremost, stigma.
Hmm.
So stigma being here at the top, and then stigma from society in general, no matter what your ethnicity or cultural background is. And
Hmm.
then we have for whichever particular ethnic group or cultural background, the stigma associated with that. And then let's just peel back some more layers of that. Whichever particular ethnic background you might have, you have your own ideas, thoughts, and about behavioral health, mental health, seeking help. In certain communities, we don't talk about that. We keep that right here. Matter of fact, we don't even acknowledge it. Oh, that's just so and so being like that.
Hmm.
And we just deal with it. Oh, and historically, hundreds, hundreds of years ago, not too long ago, people identified with a behavioral health diagnosis, or not even diagnosis, whatever it was, they were either kept up in the attic, in the closet, put away in institutions. We just put them away.
Hmm.
Previous to that, they weren't worthy, their lives weren't worthy, and thus they were sent away or sent just gone, which is very unfortunate. And to this day, we still have the stigma, and that's what definitely I've seen people hesitate. Um, and then just the ignorance and not knowing what it is that's happening or what's going on and defining it as something else. And it's a way to cope, it's a way to deal
Hmm.
with what's happening.
Hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, stigma, and you made a good point. Stigma does go across the board. I mean, if
Mhm,
you look at, and it doesn't really matter what your ethnicity is, it's across the board. Just the mainstream marketing or the mainstream awareness programs of the PSAs that are out there, they're always
mhm,
talking about don't be stigmatized. If you need help, get help,
mhm,
you know.
mhm,
And the sad thing is sometimes you just can't tell anybody, you
mhm.
know. And in your professional opinion, outside of working with your therapist, do you think that people should have at least one person they can confide in? Because we can't always get to you. I'm not calling you at 2 o'clock in the morning because I'm having a panic attack, but maybe my friend Susie might let me call her at 2 o'clock in the morning. But with the stigma, sometimes people are like, I'm going to go to therapy, but I'm not going to tell anybody.
Mhm.
So what's your thoughts on that, with stigma, or am I just ranting?
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Yes, I agree that someone should have at least one person to talk to if they're able to. And it's about trust. It's about, if I disclose this, what are you going to think of me? And it could be past side comments in a conversation, which would make one hesitant to speak up. There are hotlines and places that are, people can call and remain anonymous. With all of this technology that we have, and if you don't want to talk to anybody that you don't know, you can text. How about that? You can text a crisis line and just communicate text wise.
Oh, wow.
So there are options. There are options. And yet still, there's still the stigma. It's like what we tell ourselves. Oh, I don't want to be like that person over there. Or I don't want to be seen as weak,
Mhm.
or not being able to handle my own problems, or that type of thing. The good thing about behavioral health, and a lot of people probably don't know about it, is that there are so many different pathways to recovery. It's not just the traditional, when we think of therapy 50, 60 years ago, it was someone laying on the couch, someone who had money and could speak with a male person, because you usually didn't see the female in the chair taking notes. You saw the male and the person. There are so many different pathways of recovery, and they don't all look alike. And it goes back to being person centered, and especially being ethnic centered, like being aware and culturally sensitive about the person that you might be interacting with. There's so many different, I mean, there's lots of it, and a lot of people don't know about it. And I'm glad you've asked me about that, because it is. It's just having to find that right thing that fits with you. Because not one size fits all when it comes to behavioral health and seeking treatment, just like it is on the physical health side.
Absolutely, absolutely, because you often have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find the right my mental health professional,
Yes,
and that in and
yes.
of itself can be, frustrating because I need help and I'm hoping you can help me, and yeah, no, you can't. Let me go to door number letter B
Mm-hmm.
or letter
Mm-hmm.
C. So let's speak to that very quickly. In the search for a mental health professional, and this can be just global because
Mm-hmm.
everyone goes through this, not just people of color, but everyone goes
Mm-hmm.
through this. Along the scope, if I'm having problems with anxiety, we'll just say that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking for somebody to help me, and I go to therapist A and they don't help, and therapist B and they don't help. Doesn't that speak to the level of my anxiety climbing a little bit more every time I go and get
Hmm.
slapped down like, you know what I mean? What
Yeah.
does a person do in that search, in the search for a therapist or a mental health professional? Because you got to find the right niche,
Hmm.
the right
Hmm.
little square for you to drop your little square block into. But if I'm taking my square self, and there's a circle and there's a triangle. You're like,
Hmm.
how does one navigate that? How does one navigate?
Yes, that is very, very frustrating. And I have come across people that have had multiple behavioral health providers and are frustrated, and just it can be re-traumatizing to someone who has a history of trauma, uh, because one day they're here, the next day they're not, and they keep searching and searching. And I do encourage people to keep searching. And yes, it is frustrating. Um, you have the Google searches, and you have the 5-star reviews or the 4-star reviews. You can start there and still nothing. If you have a local community mental health agency in your area, contact them. If you have, more importantly, I'm going to use this acronym, but I'm going to say exactly what it is: CCBHC, Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic. These are federally funded clinics that are poised not to just provide public mental health services to people with severe and persistent mental illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, etc., but to people who might have anxiety disorders, to people who might have depression, or somebody might have just a situational thing coming up. So the idea behind that is that there's no wrong door, and that they should be able to help you navigate the public mental health system. CCBHCs, if you Google that, you might be able to find one in your state or local area. That's the idea behind it. Some of them are still developing, so yes, be patient. Um, One of the other things that I have noticed in terms of trying to seek out that right person, and I've noticed an explosion, if you will, of life coaches, advisors, that type of thing. That can be an option. However, what I caution is that you do your homework, and if you have a severe issue, something that you consider, oh my God, this is dire, perhaps making sure that the person that you are seeing is licensed. Could be licensed in professional counseling, could be licensed as a social worker, could be licensed as a psychologist. And then each state has a website where you can check and see if they're licensed.
Absolutely.
Start there, because their training, it's different than someone who has a life coach is a life coach, and if they're only a life coach. Like for myself, I have formal training, and I also have workshop, webinar, certification training as a wellness advisor, but they're two different areas, two different scopes, so I couldn't merge them together.
Exactly.
So I would encourage people to just kind of continue on. And yes, it is frustrating. Um, I myself I would like to put myself out there as to help, because I'm a helper. Like, let me help you find someone. um, but then that's a lot. That's a lot. But I would, if someone did have some frustrations, really just couldn't do it, I would also be available to do that, because that's just naturally what I would do, because I want people to be well.
Mhm. That's perfect. Um, Awesome, because I mean, this is kind of like the questions are just coming as we're having the conversation, but I'll get us back on script.
Sure.
So that's great. Now the pandemic is kind of leveling out now, kind of, because it's like the
Hmm.
EKG reading,
Hmm.
peaking and not. What is the current status of mental health in the communities of people of color? What would you say is the current status of mental health? Have you seen increases of issues in mental health? As we're leveling out, have you seen things start to level out as well, or have you seen decreases? What's the landscape looking like from your neck of the woods? Because I know you can't speak for the
Hmm.
country.
Hmm. Well, in my neck of the woods in the state of Michigan, there is definitely an increase in request for services.
Okay.
And here on the flip side, there is a significant work workforce shortage. So the people, the providers, and it was pre-pandemic a shortage in workforce providers. Yet since just in my own agency, people have left to pursue other, other options. And the stress of the pandemic for every single individual has affected them in a different way. So much so the pressure of the job meant I can't do this anymore. And at the same time, there's an increase in people saying, I just need somebody to talk to, or I need this, or I need that. And then the trickle down effect, the result of the pandemic in general, it could be the food shortage, the supply shortage. There was a moratorium on, at least in Michigan, I don't know if it was across the country, on people being evicted because they couldn't pay because they didn't have a job. And, now things are coming back in place now. Now's the things leveling out. So I might be homeless. Well, can you think about how that might affect someone's anxiety, depression, that type of thing? So yeah, we're seeing an increase in requesting services, just requesting assistance with the basic needs that can have a terrible impact on someone's health.
Wow. Wow. That in and of itself is another health outcome, just,
Absolutely.
not having your basic needs met. Wow. And
Hmm.
that's one thing you're the second interview that I'm doing for the Health Awareness Month. And that was another thing, like basic needs has been an outcome in terms of the disparities that the communities are seeing, as opposed to the communities that have a little bit more access to resources. Wow. And the question is, what do we do about that? I know from a mental health perspective, it is, what you guys are needing are more people to help you do the work, and more people to step up and not to burn the people out that are still
Hmm.
there. So that's
Yeah,
a fine dance. And
it is very
how
delicate
do you
balance.
figure that one out? Wow, wow. Yeah. So, um, speaking of outcomes, what are some of the outcomes that have occurred in the minority communities, especially from those who sought out and received help? Like, has there been a reduction in crime? Has there been an increase in crime? Has there been an increase or decrease in things like domestic abuse or family crises?
Mhm.
What have you been finding in terms of the outcomes?
So, with in terms of the outcomes, unfortunately, there has not been a lot of study or research in that area to even measure that. So what I speak from is observation and personal professional experience. And I'm just it's just my own little subsample of persons that I have worked with. Some key things in behavioral health treatment, though, like I mentioned earlier about person centered planning, and then going a layer deeper and trying to, number one, be culturally sensitive, aware, and perhaps tailoring whatever treatment or intervention that you're providing to that person so that you can possibly get the best outcome. Um, Again, we talked about basic needs. Someone comes to you with probably an anxiety or depressive disorder or something more significant, chronic, and has housing issues and has income issues and has family issues. What is it that we can do as professionals? Well, number one, we need to always, continuing education and also thinking about what it is that we can do to assist the person to get their basic needs met. We call that social determinants of health. That's definitely a measured outcome that we are just now starting to do at my agency to measure the outcomes and kind of see where people are. The expectation is with sustained treatment, sustained, effective, quality treatment, let me put that in there, that those social determinants of health will improve housing, food assistance, making sure you have enough food to last you through the month and that type of thing. Um, the education and continuing education of the providers is essential and important. And when I say, you hear culturally sensitive or culturally competent, which is a requirement, at least in our state, for other providers to take on a regular basis, it's all well and good. However, you have to apply that as a provider. You have to really be open and honest, number one, with your implicit bias, so that you can be open to the person that you are providing services for. And I have a perfect example of that just came to mind as I was preparing to meet with you. Many, many years ago, I worked with a gentleman who we were treating for schizophrenia. He was well known in the community because he was always symptomatic, so everybody kind of knew who he was. And his the thought was he was dangerous and he carried weapons with him. I was with him in an appointment with a psychiatrist, and he was calm, he was pleasant, he was appropriate, and he pulled out a knife. He didn't pull out a knife to like say, "Hey, I got this knife and I'm getting ready to stab you." He just pulled out the knife because the psychiatrist was asking him some questions to assess his mental status. The psychiatrist wrote on the document, he pulled out a knife. He immediately, got upset, got scared, called security. I walked out with him. He was calm. And what he said to the psychiatrist during that time, and I forget what he asked him, and then maybe it had something to do with medications. And at that time, he was refusing medications, i.e., and then he was, symptomatic. He said in his, I wouldn't say ramblings, but disorganized speech, he mentioned the Tuskegee experiment.
He mentioned what?
The Tuskegee experiment.
Oh, okay.
And immediately I understood it because this gentleman was like 6'5", African American. I knew exactly why he had a knife, and he asked him about the meds, and he was like, "Oh no, I don't want the meds." Psychiatrist was white, Caucasian, European descent male, and if he's a brilliant psychiatrist. He also, when you think of psychiatrists with the coat on, he was the typical what you would envision, the one sitting by the couch type of person, right? And immediately I understood that, and immediately I did not take that as a threat. He had a moment of lucidity, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. I have no idea if that psychiatrist knew what he was talking about because I understood why he cared.
Exactly. Exactly. And that, to your point, is about when you really have to really get in touch with your implicit biases. And you do have to open up your mind and do your research. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
work with these communities, you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand the community. And
Absolutely.
and the implicit bias, that you just discussed is fear. We always fear what we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we don't understand it and we fear it, we will never understand it. Because that's just my little take on
No,
things,
I agree.
because
I agree.
because we just have to get to that point. We
Mm-hmm.
just have to get to that point. And wow, what a very, very poignant example that you just gave. And I would hope that it would really kind of pique the interest, or even just give somebody a point of conviction to actually say, maybe I need to check that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my hope that our conversation does that. Um, wow, that's really deep. Here's a question I have for you. Does your organization, or do you know of any organizations that shake hands with the other organizations that provide housing and that provide jobs? Is it like a shaking of the hands or reaching across the aisles? Hey, we have this client in need of housing. They're experiencing anxiety because they need some place to live and they need some place to work so that they can pay for the place to live. Is that something that's in your organization or in the industry in and of itself that you would know about?
It, I would say that it depends on the agency.
Mhm.
For my particular agency, we actually have a community housing department,
Okay.
and it has gone through various morphing over the years. It used to be called the apartment program, where they actually helped us. They worked with local landlords. They helped house people. They helped them with first month's rent deposit, and then helped them with budgeting. They had people go in, so it was a very supportive program. And then over the years it morphs, but it's still community housing. We're still looking to house people who are having difficult times, always, have histories of evictions for one thing or another. A lot of times they might have gotten sick, had to be hospitalized, couldn't pay the rent. Landlord's like, I don't understand mental health, get them out of here. They're causing too many problems. We work with landlords. Um, it has brought into the wider community. So because it's, that's, a health outcome, housing. So it's not just with people with behavioral health concerns, it's for a wider community for various reasons. And it might be, as I'm talking about this, when I say to the wider community, and we talked about the stigma, which might prevent people from seeking help, sometimes the people that have worked in the housing department have helped individuals through a similar program, but these people have not been identified or self-identify as needing behavioral health services. Yet the student clinician says, wait a second, this might be a barrier to you sustaining housing. And they offer, and the people say, no, no, thank you. So, there's education of all around, education for the person who may not be in behavioral health services, education for the landlords who, once they understand, are learning to work with our people that we serve. Um, so yeah, it's our organization has that. We also work with different agencies that we contract with that are poised to work with individuals to help them seek and sustain employment, various degrees. It could be supported employment, skill building so that they can get to the supported employment stage, and then eventually where they don't need the assistance, they're able to sustain gainful employment. So our agency does do that, and it depends on the agency, depends on what's in their community, and funding as well.
Wow. That's good that you guys have that. I don't think all communities have it, but I think that it's something that should be addressed. Maybe, I guess it would probably have to be at the state level. You can't stick government in there. Plus you don't want to, then it becomes bureaucratic, long-termed and challenging. And I'm going to just leave it at that.
It is.
Yeah, but at the state level, it would be great to see the different states do that.
Mhm,
So, and it's really interesting because a lot of states do have some very, very creative ways to help the homeless, especially in California, where they build these teeny tiny houses now, and you
mhm.
have some place to live. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, it would be nice to see the states do some benchmarking, see what's working and how they can kind of pull that together on a state level. That would be wonderful. Um, so I guess my last question is going to be, what are some effective measures that we as individuals can do for ourselves to ensure our continued good mental health? And I would say, I want to just say this: I do not suffer from anxiety, and not to be put off or mean to people
Mhm,
who do, but I know
mhm.
personally I do not. But for those that do suffer with anxiety and do suffer with depression and do suffer with things outside of getting professional help, because it's very serious, and my heart, I have a heart for my brothers and sisters that do have these challenges. What on an individual level and what on a community level and maybe perhaps a familial level can we do to help ourselves and to help people in our familial community and maybe our local community?
So individually, first and foremost, is to accept, and that can be hard because we are our thoughts. So what we tell ourselves is what is going to be intrinsically pulled in and stay in. So first and foremost, which is, I acknowledge it is tough, is to acknowledge I am feeling this way. I am going through something, and acknowledging that it is tough. One of the things I did when I was younger, did not know that I was managing my own mental health. Mental health of now that I look back and I'm a trained professional, it was probably, I would say, depression. Not necessarily major depression, maybe just the, incidental or something or whatever. I'm not sure what it was. But what I used to do, and it started as I guess it was probably a preteen, watching those ABC after school specials. Okay, so I'm dating myself. And one of the characters journaled. And the girls would journal, dear diary, blah, 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 blah. And they talk about the day. It's like, oh, I remember starting a diary at age 8, and I still have it. And I did that, but then it became a habit, and I used just to journal, 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 journal. But what I did not know at that time is that whatever was in here was coming out on the page. Now, it was the whole, this is what happened to my day. But if I had a bad day, then that was on the pages as well. So if you're not ready to ask for help or seek help, perhaps journaling or writing your thoughts down, because it does come out. You just put pen to paper and just go, let it flow. Don't even try to think about it. That's a start. That's one thing, and I think it's the simplest thing to do as a start for an individual. And then at some point, if you feel compelled to reach out, reach out. Now, if I don't want to reach out to an organization, um, I would encourage, again, you would have to do some homework, or maybe, a lot of people now on social media in search of, blah, blah, maybe they don't, but maybe they have a trusted person that they can ask, hey, do you guys need somebody I talk to, like a coach? Maybe I need a life coach. Maybe, could start there, because when you think of life coach or something like that, you don't think about psychologists, psychiatrists, but the stigma that we talked about earlier is not attached to that. And should you find someone who is not in that area, like in the professional area of psychologists, like, that type of thing, and it doesn't seem to be stigmatizing to you, it is my wish that if whoever you speak with or interact with, if it gets to a point where it's beyond their scope of practice, that they share that with you and make some recommendations to seek treatment, and probably align you with someone, because they know you, someone that they think that you work well with. And then, Yvonne, to your point of, if there's someone that you trust just in your family to speak about, but then sometimes our family don't even want to hear about it, brush you off, they invalidate whatever it is you're going through. Oh, please, child, okay, so you may not have anyone in your family. But then let's go to family. And for family, if you see someone, and here's the thing that I've learned over the years, your gut, something tells you, there's a little voice, something that pops up all the time and it keeps coming. That's your intuition saying, okay, something's not right with this person. I think I need to reach out and just start, just kind of asking questions. And maybe not asking questions. Maybe if asking questions is too much, maybe slide on a piece of paper with a contact place number or hotline or something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is these are gems. This has been a very rich and just empowering conversation for me. I've learned a lot. So it's always great to talk to you with your different hat on, Marie, because I'm always trying to learn something new. And I just thank you for taking time with me. I think we went over oh yeah, girl, we did go over what I thought we were going to do.
Oh, yes.
but that's because when you have good conversation and you're getting good information, why stop the train? so so I want to thank you for taking the time just to bless us with all of your information, and just for your participation in my project that is near and dear to my heart, Minority Health Awareness Month, that actually did grow out of COVID. And so I'm going to continue going down the track of gathering information that will help to improve our health on all levels for our communities, and even for other communities. For the larger community, this is a great place to learn about your neighbors and the things that we all go through, and there are ways we can continue to reach out and help one another. So this has been perfect. Thank you so much for your time and all of your information that you've given us. And that was just excellent. Thank you again